This episode covers a wide range of topics, and before I introduce today's guests, I want to put out a disclaimer that we discuss eating disorders, suicidal feelings, and depression in this episode. So please keep that in mind while you're listening, and feel free to take breaks or skip this episode entirely if you need to. I'm also going to provide a list of resources in the description below for anybody who may be struggling. We got the pleasure to sit down with Chandler Leip, who is the founder of The Den, and her husband, Jack Gibbs, who has his own successful career in software sales. And if you follow me on any social media platform or you're a parent living in Denver, you have definitely seen me at The Den or posting about The Den. I practically live here. I'm always here with my boys. Lucas and I record some of our podcast episodes from here, and Jack and Chandler have become good friends of ours over the last 6 months. The Den is just so amazing for parents. It's a social club for families that includes a beautiful community space and play area for kids, as well as classes and, of course, great coffee. I am always getting an oat milk matcha. For a while there, I couldn't pick a coffee order. And it's funny because Chandler sometimes does a member drink of the week, and she's like, I cannot make you the member drink of the week because you don't have a drink that you always order. But I think I have settled on an oat milk matcha with honey, and it's just fire. It's so good. Anyway, Chandler shares the entire story of how The Den even came to be in this episode, but what you need to know is that she aims to provide a supportive and dignified experience for anyone navigating the parenthood journey and searching for something different. I mean, if you're a parent of small children, you know how isolating it can feel and compromising it can be because a lot of the play spaces are designed poorly and too colorful and playing Baby Shark and Blippi songs in the background. And it's just not the vibe, right? But this space, The Den, was made for parents in mind. So it has neutral and calming colors. There's folk music like Noah Kahan and John Mayer and Taylor Swift even. And they have excellent coffee. It really just is about making parents feel seen and held and surrounded by like-minded community, which is really what we all need as parents of small children. This episode doesn't just cover The Den, though. Jack, her husband, also shares lots of tips for having a successful corporate career, marriage, and communication. So if you're interested in entrepreneurship, being successful in corporate, maintaining a strong marriage, navigating pregnancy and postpartum, and learning about Jack and Chandler's recipe, which you should be because they are such a power couple, then this episode is for you. And if you like it, please give us a rating and review as it really helps people find our show. With that, we'll see you in the kitchen.
Let's cook.
I was like, okay, baited for that. Okay.
Let me be awkward first before you.
Please
You
do.
know?
Thank you. Take it from me.
You know?
Okay, Jack and Chandler, thanks so much for being here on What's Recipe in our humble abode, aka your humble abode, The Den.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course.
Here at our place.
We're so stoked to have you. So let's just get started. Chandler, obviously, we are in The Den, a really special place, a place that you founded, that you created. Jack, thank you for being here as well. You know,
Period.
side piece, yeah.
You have your own career in sales. And, The Den is super special, but something I wanted to start with, and what I also think is special, is every now and then when you come to The Den, you also see Jack making coffees, whipping out croissants, cleaning the place up, and it creates, obviously with you two being married, it creates a very family-centric community, right? Seeing a couple who is here every day, or not every day, but every other day. So I'd love to start, we'll get to The Den, but I'd really love to start with you two first and kind of your origin story. So can you kind of explain to us and the listeners, how you two met and came to be?
I'll take it. Okay.
No, you go.
So we met in New York City.
The Big Apple.
I moved there in beginning of 2012, right after I graduated college, with the intention of working at the UN. But New York City for me was like this big scary place. Meanwhile, Chandler had been at school there and had figured out New York because she went there for all of her undergrad. And I had a friend that I met with to kind of hang out with that we decided to room together, and he had grown up in Minneapolis, and I was a kid from Wisconsin. And within the first month of us actually getting to know each other, he was like, I got somebody you're really going to like. And I was like,
Really?
okay, sure. Mind you, first few months in New York City, lots going on. There's so much opportunity,
Yeah.
generally
Right.
speaking. And yeah, we met. And
So
then
that was grad school for you.
that was just go find a career. That was going to go
Okay,
work
that
for the
was
UN.
after- okay.
Didn't work out for a number of reasons, but that was just graduating college. Went and found her within 4 months of
When
graduating.
found her.
Found her.
Puppy.
Where is she?
No, needle
Yeah.
in a haystack. Yeah,
So
no, that's good.
Chandler, can you explain like how you that night, like what does that look like? Was
Well,
it dinner? or
first
was
of
it-
all, I want to know, how did you get to New York? Why New York?
I always wanted to move to New York. When I was 12 is when the book The Devil Wears Prada came out.
hell yeah.
Well, I didn't read the book.
Well, you should.
I should read the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird
yeah.
But the
now
movie-
when you're like a grown up.
Yeah.
But like when you were 12 and you're like, this is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
But like I read that when I was 12 and Minneapolis didn't really feel like home to me, even though I really love it as a city. And so I kind of fixated on the idea of The Devil Wears Prada. And so when I turned 18, I moved out to New York City to go to this like very small fashion school.
What was it called?
LIM.
Okay.
It's the business of fashion. So I got an undergrad degree in business, but they would apply it to the fashion industry. So I'd have like internships in fashion businesses, but applying it like to what I was studying.
That makes sense. And I guess if you want to be successful in fashion, like it makes sense. New York City,
New York's
right?
the place.
Yeah,
It's the Mecca.
absolutely.
Yep. And
yeah,
Paris.
and I just liked like the busyness of it.
Yeah.
But the night that I met Jack, and just on my end, Jonah, who introduced us, is one of my best friends from growing up. We went to middle school together, and he said similarly, like, I just have somebody that I think you're really gonna like. And so I went to Jack's barbecue that he was hosting, and as we
Where were you? Was it like an apartment? What was it?
So I was renting a apartment for $500 a month in Brooklyn,
Wow.
which
That's
got
not
me
bad.
0 windows in my
Okay.
bedroom, and had a bunch of really random
Right.
roommates I didn't know. So I was
Not
hosting at a
passing by
place
the
that
fire
was
code.
not mine,
Yeah.
really.
Were
but
you cooking in a barbecue?
I
in a-
barbecued. I
an
invited
apartment
everyone
with no
I knew, which
windows?
was like 12 people at the time. Yeah.
That is hilarious.
good.
What were you eating?
Well,
What'd
he was
what'd you-
outside. He was
It was- oh,
cooking
yeah,
in
yeah,
his
no,
room
no.
with no windows. That's math.
Like, I'm
That-
trying to picture
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, they had a back patio.
the shower on.
Yeah,
The building is no longer there because a fire actually.
Yeah, it got raided. Yeah.
What was on the grill? I gotta know. Obviously.
Oh, it was something very basic because I wanted to tend to the guests at the same time. I was trying
Yeah.
to do both duties. You know, I
Yeah.
had nobody to help.
Strategic.
Probably bratwurst, true Midwestern guy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
But I didn't perform the best that night.
Well,
we'll
okay,
say.
so
Yeah.
so every time that I would say something, I could tell that like Jack was dialed
Wait,
into
did
me.
you know? Okay, your friend Jonah said, I have someone for you to meet. Did you guys know who it was when he said that? Like, did he say, okay, it's going to be Jack
My
Chandler?
friend Jack. Yeah, but
Okay.
we didn't really have
'Kay.
social media at that point.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think. So it's
No,
like we could
I didn't
look
have
at-
a smartphone yet even. Yeah.
Yeah,
Whoa,
that's how
that-
fucking old we are. So we couldn't look into each other. But at the barbecue, Jack was like really dialed into me, and I was like, if I said something that was even slightly funny, Jack would like drop something or something, and I was like, I'm so funny, and this is such like a romantic comedy. But it actually turned out that Jack had an entire pot brownie, and he was really fucking high, but he
Oh,
like
nice.
was not anticipating it, and he was like struggling to
That
like.
is
It was very
so-
stressful for me
Yeah.
looking back. Yes.
I was like, we're in love. And he
Your
was like,
hands
I'm
were
gonna
numb.
die,
Like,
I'm
Yeah.
so
you feel
high.
It's
anything.
like I have to talk to guests. I have to cook. I have to.
Did you know you were eating a pot brownie?
I
before?
knew. Yeah, I got into it knowing that was going to have
That
weed in
is
it, but I thought it
so
was a
funny.
small dosage and it knocked me out.
Right. Yeah. You see. So going into this barbecue, there was sort of this kind of interesting pressure in a way, being like, I'm about to meet Jack, the guy that my friend told me about, and you're going into it. I'm about to meet Chandler, like the girl that my friend told me about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then we, because without social media, and we ended up Google messaging each other.
I added you on LinkedIn.
Oh, was it LinkedIn first? Wow,
And
super
he made fun of
professional.
me for it.
Yeah.
He was like, "This is your move." He just added me on LinkedIn, and then we like chatted for a month.
Yeah. We did.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
So
We
wait, when was the second hangout?
I don't remember.
Like a month later?
Probably
Kind
Central
of a
Park or
blur.
something.
Oh
or-
yeah, Central Park.
yeah.
I used to go to Alliance Française and like take French classes, and he met me
What?
out. I speak French, and he met
Fluent?
me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, the
but I
answer is
haven't
yes.
practiced in a while. Anyways, and I love it, and he speaks German actually. But
We got a good Rosetta Stone, babe.
Yeah.
God, we don't know anything.
Duolingo. is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Duolingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He met me after that, and we hung out in Central Park.
Okay. And so you were in fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You were doing what?
At the time, I was working in the non-profit industry with a slum school in Kibera, helping with women's education, girls' education.
Love that. And
And
you
he
mean
was working as a waiter.
And I was working at an
Actually paid
Italian
for his
restaurant.
life.
Yeah.
oh, at Italian restaurant?
Yep.
Nice. Love that.
Hawking
Love that.
pizza.
So you're kind of new to the city. At that point, you are like, this is my city. I flourish here. Was it fun taking him around to spots that he'd never been to? Like, was that sort of what you guys did? Were you like, let me show you what's up in New
I
York?
think
Or was it?
was Prospect Park in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm kind of like I don't know. I'm not a like, these are all the places I go to. I'm
Okay.
like, I like to read books and like maybe
Yeah.
go to the same park frequently. And so I think we did a lot more like, he probably showed me more places because
True
he's
that.
much more outgoing in that way. But then I was like, I just want to like walk around aimlessly for 3 hours and drink a coffee. And so we would do that,
Yeah, we did that a
in
lot.
Brooklyn.
So then when was the moment where you guys were like, okay, this is my person?
Probably from like the
Like
moment.
really early. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like first week maybe.
Yeah, but Jack really wanted us to have a label on it.
Right.
And like,
Romantic.
I remember.
Sorry. I don't
The
know.
romantic heart. I
Define the
love it.
relationship now.
Yeah, he was like,
I mean,
just
it
want
wasn't
us
like
to be-
first week I was asking for that.
No,
it was
it
like
was- no.
second month, third month.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I think, but
It's normal.
Jesus, it's supposed to be sweet. You're like, whoa.
You know.
The famous, so what are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
But my point is, the reason that I didn't want to put a title on it is because I knew we were going to get married someday.
Right.
And so I was like,
Meanwhile-
must we?
Yeah.
I was 22.
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
you're bullshitting me and telling me that you don't believe in the Institute of Marriage. And
That's
like,
true.
I
yeah.
said the same thing.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah. And then I was like, except I'm going to marry this guy.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so then, how long did you guys stay in New York?
I was there for 6-7 years.
I was there for 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
6
Yeah.
years. Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, probably together.
why Colorado?
We actually went to California.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
We went to San Francisco.
Well, Chandler got sick of New York. Got needed to get out.
Okay.
Not only sick of New York, but also sick of the fashion industry, or you stayed in fashion going to California? What's that whole situation?
I love New York so much. It's so much energy.
Yeah.
And after a while, I was like, I don't want to be in my industry. And it's like, I'm not even like staying here because I at least have this one thing figured out. I just was like, I don't know if this is a space for me.
Plus, if I can add, like New York is very, especially in your 20s, it's very focused on brunching and drinking
Yeah.
and going out late, and
Yeah.
Social.
that's the shtick for New York for a lot of people
Yeah.
that age, and that was not you ever.
No, that was not me. Sorry, this keeps dinging. So I wanted to go to California because, like, I knew that Jack could find a job in California, in San Francisco, because Jack's in tech now, and he was then. And so I was like, okay, like, there's a completely different experience to be had somewhere else. We were engaged at this point. So I was like, I believe that he could find something. But actually, we were apart for 6 months, and we got married living in different states.
During those 6 months.
You
yeah.
did?
Yeah. And we like, I flew to, like, we lived apart for 6 months, and then we just, we got married in New York at City Hall, and then we flew to France and just, like, celebrated there. And then I went home to California, and he went to New York.
So you went to California first.
Yes.
So you were like, dude, I gotta
I
get
gotta
out of here.
What
And
was that moment though? Was it fashion specifically that you were like, I need to get out of, or was it just New York in general? Or all of it?
I think it was just a reset. I think I like was just longing for something else.
Yeah.
And I was starting to feel really resentful of Jack's success. And I was like, I don't want to go into a marriage not being happy when my partner gets a promotion because I'm lost in my life. And so it was like, all right, I'm going to go here. I know we're forever. I'm not worried about that. He'll meet me, but it's probably better to be emotionally close than physically close
Right.
as we lead to marriage.
Oof, I really love and respect that, because I think that's a big problem that couples have a hard time navigating. When one person is super kind of lost, the other person is killing it in whatever career that they've chose to go down. I'd love to understand, how you really digested that. So you moving to California was a big step for you to kind of fix that issue between the two of you.
I think, like every relationship, especially marriage, you can look in the long term, and they always have their ebbs and flows. I was definitely in a flow when you left, and the second you got to San Francisco, you could immediately tell from energy you fell into a flow too. And then I moved to San Francisco shortly thereafter, and I fell into an ebb for sure. But I think one is figuring out how to, yes, not be frustrated when the other one has that. And the den is also one of those great examples, which we can talk about in a few minutes. But that just communication of like, this is your turn. And we've had that. That's the conversation that comes up a lot, or a theme that comes up is it's your turn. And that's changed several times. That has exchanged hands in the last 12 years.
I want to know maybe some tips that you could share for like even getting to that conversation, because I think that's the hardest part for people, is actually getting to the point where you're like, oh, I'm feeling this. Let me talk about it. So for you guys, like if you could go back there, like what were some tips maybe on both of you guys' part to navigate that conversation without really taking it too personally, you know?
Go ahead. You got
Well, I was
something
gonna
in
say,
mind?
I'm always diving into the conversation.
Yeah.
You're like, look, motherfucker.
Yeah, I'm like, this is how I feel in this exact second.
Yeah.
And who knows where we're going?
I was going to
But-
say the same thing. She doesn't hold back, which is great, because
Yeah.
then I don't have to be guessing all the
I
time.
love.
Right.
I think
Right.
that's extremely healthy.
It's
right?
so valuable. Yeah.
That's. I mean, a lot of people either grow up like, shoving things under the rug and everyone being really confused, or people grow up being like, we all know exactly how we feel about each other. You know. So I love that.
And I think Jack is not as much like that. And I think that there's a really good balance there, because sometimes it's almost like I can be high maintenance about like, I really need to talk. I'm feeling really anxious. That's like a 3 times a day kind of a thing that I'm like texting him or something. And so he's like, I don't want to like overshadow the relationship, but it's like, I can also learn from him.
Yeah.
And like, maybe he's feeling something, but he's like, I'm not sure yet. So I just need to think about it a little
Right.
bit more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, got it. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes hold on.
No, see, and Lucas and I are both the same way, both like, let's dive into this. And then it turns into sometimes like a tornado. And Lennox is like, take a deep breath, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Calm it
Totally
down.
see that.
Calm it down.
Did Jack immediately sort of understand and get it when you guys had that first conversation, or were you like a little offended?
I remember feeling a very profound moment the first time we had a like pillow talk, lay down, have a real talk about our feelings, and be like, holy shit, I did not have this with my family.
Oh, you're talking about general talk.
You're talking
that
about
what you're
serious talk,
asking?
getting
Or
into
you're
your
talking about
emotions.
the
That's
move?
great. I'm talking about like Chandler communicating to you like, I am feeling some resentment, around your success. You're in this flow.
Okay.
I'm in this ebb. Like something needs to change here. Like, how did you feel about that?
What moment comes to mind?
That we were at the restaurant when I was like, I'm gonna move to California.
Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Can I just toss this one to you to answer? But I'm just curious. Like, Jack is a child of divorce, and so I am not. And so for me, I'm like, and we'll be together forever. Like, it's fine.
Right.
But like, part of our
Panic
marriage is
mode.
learning how he receives something from his own experience. And so I remember that being scary.
Absolutely.
To you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. She's like, I'm moving. And you're like, okay, bye.
But we're engaged.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. And so then, well, actually, first, I want to go back. It's kind of switching gears, because I think there's a lot of people who romanticize fashion specifically, especially as women, and like 99% of our demographics is women. I romanticized it a lot. I went to Taurus, the new school in New York, and I was like, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to be this, huge person, like whatever.
Well, yeah, when we were 16 years old, her first thing was a fashion blog.
Yeah, I had a
I was
fashion
taking
blog.
pictures of her outfits.
Oh, I
was
should pull
taking-
some
Damn,
of
you're
these.
doing
I
that
should
early.
pull
I was
some of
taking
these.
pictures of her earrings. You gotta get my
Get the
earrings.
details,
I was
babe.
taking pictures of the shoes, and then the whole body, and then each. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to go, but like I think even things like The Devil Wears Prada, even though it's not like the most like nice kind of depiction of New York, it probably is a little bit like similar to how it actually is. I would love for you to talk about maybe like how people romanticize it, and then maybe like some of the realities that you ran into.
I think, God, I'm just trying to think. I think the fashion industry is really cool. I think that some of my experiences, because like I wasn't like designing clothes.
Right.
I was in HR and operations specifically, and so I was also like tangential. Not necessarily when I was studying, I was doing more fashion stuff, but like that's where I found my jobs, and so there was like a little bit of a conflict for me about what I thought the fashion industry was versus what I was doing within the fashion industry. Like, the last thing I did before I left was implement Workday, which is a technology, which was really cool, and I got to travel, but it wasn't the same
Fashion.
as what you're seeing. And
Right.
yeah, so I think that like there's a lot of great things. I am a very like aesthetically motivated person, so working at a fashion company like every day, I was like, kind of being sparked with energy, with like how people put themselves together. I do think that sometimes people could be mean in a way that I haven't experienced as much in other industries or locations. So I think that that can be celebrated. I also think, like, I was in retail and New York City, so like, you know, you get in right before 9 and you leave after 6, like, or at least when I was there, at your desk, and that's not including like train and all of these things. And so like that kind of commitment was just like, oh, if I don't love this, that's exhausting. I just don't want to say that it sucks if it's like, yeah, but somebody else like felt so on purpose doing that. So yeah.
I'd also add somewhat tangential. My sister is a fashion designer, was a fashion designer. That's one of the reasons that also drew me to New York. To demystify the industry, one thing I found super fascinating was, and she worked for, we'll call it big box companies like Express and Taylor. They would literally go shopping down in Soho, where all the fashion designers put their stuff in nice galleries and studios or their brick and mortars. And they would go and try on all the clothes and take photos in the fitting rooms. And they would just say, let's just knock all this off. They would go on shopping sprees to just knock off designs of other people. And I just did not even know that happened in the industry. I was like, it's crazy. But it's like, wow, this is literally the sausage being made in the back room.
Right.
It's true, but that's also a part of an adoption curve, because where she was working was receiving like not cutting edge fashion. And the whole point of fashion houses is that you know that like you're creating and you're innovating.
You're the trend.
And it trickles down.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
And it becomes accessible in other ways. So anyways, it was cool. And I was like, well, I just really care about meaning. And so for me, this is not as meaningful as I thought it would be when I was 12 years old. So I want to find the meaning that works for me.
Well, I think you make a good point too, because I think there are a lot of people who are probably listening who are working something that is very demanding and they don't love it. And so I think that's a great point to make, is like, if this is not your thing, if this is not your purpose, if this is not why, like if you don't love this thing so much, you have to question, you have to like have a sit down conversation with yourself and say, why am I actually doing this?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get hired too, really not knowing what the fuck their role entails before they start day one. And they're like, you know, I thought I was getting myself into the fashion industry, but I'm implementing software Workday, you know? So I think it's important to, I think LinkedIn is beautiful as well these days. It's been around a long time. You know, speaking to people who are actually in the role that you're doing before you know, accept the job.
I also think that like, when I talk to people about careers, sometimes I think that they can have like a finite belief system about like, well, I have to accept if this role isn't perfect, then you know, my happiness just will go downhill. And I think that it's really cool to think that like, no matter what, you're on your path and you're drawing from different experiences that you gain on this path.
Right.
Like, you know, like leave a job if you don't like it. And if you don't want a job, that's fine. But like finding what's perfect is like, that would be really cool to remove that need and just be like, whatever job I take, I will learn things. Like there's jobs that I have.
notches to the belt.
That I apply to running a business that I'm like, who knew those two things were relevant?
That's true. The amount of things that I feel like, because of your background of experience, from fashion to HR to operations to global projects to project management to HR systems, like it actually gave you the right foundation to build something like the Den.
Yeah, it's like things come up every day that.
Yeah.
What I'm sure too, you were talking about when you got to California, you were in ed, but you were talking about in New York, you were in a flow?
I was, yeah.
So I'm curious, like what were kind of your building blocks of like getting to where you were in a flow?
So I was in a nonprofit industry. I quickly realized that was not a good fit to my personality, because I want things to run smoothly and be operationally efficient, and I want to like be a part of a movement. While that was a movement, the challenge was it was selling a sob story. It was selling like slum children in Kenya, which I couldn't really relate to. I wasn't there. I didn't experience it. Felt like very inauthentic to be part of these marketing events and programs and trying to build this foundation for something that I didn't feel like directly impacted me. And so what it did show me was I liked sales. I liked being a representation for the company.
Right.
Directly after that, I fell into a software sales gig as a BDR. I'm sure you know that role where you're pounding the phones. And that was, again, my first true sales job. And a company was on the up and up, and I hit it at the right time. Granted, this company does not exist anymore, not in the same way. And I just kept leapfrogging into different jobs in that, and it was a perfect time to join. I was a good fit for my personality.
Right.
And in sales, especially in tech sales, if you continue to climb and grow, like you can make good money and a good living. And for me, especially in New York City, how expensive it is there, I was like, shit, we can go on trips now. We can go to Paris and go to Germany, and we can live the life that we want to. And that was just a new level of freedom that I hadn't felt.
The OG BDR role, baby.
What does that even stand for?
Business Development Representative.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's tough.
Yeah, or I was an SDR.
Oh, yeah,
so
same
it's
thing.
the same.
Yeah.
It's literally the same thing, just pounding the phones, emails. But back to, because we're going to build up to the den, but back to Chandler. Hey, I'm moving to California. You're like, holy shit. Were you immediately like, okay, well, I'm going to move too? Or were you like, what did you do when you went to California, and how did you make your way over to California? What was that whole part of your lives?
I think I realized, so we broke up for a year, 6 months.
I mean, that was like
5
years
months.
before.
Doesn't matter. What I learned during that breakup was I can't smother her. I can't be too intense. And this was clearly a journey she needed to go on. I was also having a good thing going with my company, and I had enough leverage to say, like, this is what's happening. My family's moving. I would like to stay with you all, but let's make it work for both of us. And a few months additionally right before I was going to get married, where I could spend more time with my friends and my sister, was actually in a lot of ways good for me, because then I didn't feel like I was sucked out of New York City. I kind of got to have a slow fade. And so that was the learning of, like, let her go, find herself. And obviously once she got there, I immediately saw a change in her perspective. And we kind of agreed on, like, this is the timeline roughly, and I'm going to try and make this work. But then the company that I moved with, I was running the sales organization at that time. I was going back to New York also every month for a full week. So
Gotcha.
even when I was living in San Francisco, I was working in our studio apartment or our 1-bedroom apartment, and then flying back to New York for a full week every month. So I still had the New York life that wasn't fully pulled away from me yet, which is a good transition in a way looking back.
Yeah, I think that's healthy. You know, you still get a taste of that tech in the big city. So what did you get into? You know, moving to California, was your job pre-set up? Were you like, I'm just going to go and then figure it out there? What did that look like?
First of all, I had a fucking blast. I was like, I love whales. And like,
hell yeah.
I was like, I can't believe I'm in a city where I can see a whale at the end of the day. Like, it was so different from New York City that I was like on a high for 3 months of just like, this is crazy. I can like see the sky if I look this way, and like I can see kite surfers. Anyways, I did have a job lined up. I always do everything through networking. That's just my personality type. And so
Strength.
And I had a list of people, like an Excel document of people. And whenever I finish a conversation, I'll always be like, who can I talk to that you know?
Yeah.
And so I just networked from New York City to California until I found a job. And then I got one and moved out there.
What is the secret sauce to networking?
Ask other people questions. Like, as long as people walk away feeling lighter because they met you, then they'll help you. They're like, I got a fucking free therapy session. Whatever you need. And
I was just talking about this on our last episode about people, because we were talking about how sometimes people will literally not be listening to you and just like want to think about
what their thing.
Exactly. Think about what they're going to say next. But at the end of the day, all people want to do is just be heard.
Yes.
Like, people want to be heard. And if you give them that, you're so right. People will do you favors or just like help you out because they want to help you.
Yeah. And one, I don't mind listening to people. Yeah. And two, I feel like I have such an immense reserve of other people's experience that I can be like, actually, you know, I'm not trying to fuck with that because Rachel from so-and-so told me a life story that this happened. And I think it can only benefit you to listen to other people and be curious.
Yeah, the curiosity is the term. And there's an analogy that was used, I don't know who said it, but think of it like a tree branch. If you're having a conversation with somebody and you're on a branch, you can have 4 or 5 different branches spin off from that one branch. Try to get at least 3 or 4 pegs down from one conversation in one tree branch before you try and go to another tree branch. You're going to have much more deep conversations. You're going to pull way more information out of them than they ever would have shared. And to your point, people love talking about themselves. So try to ask 2 to 3 to 4 follow-up questions and be that curious person, and you'll learn great insights. And then more importantly, I think sometimes in those informational interviews is what you then can get out of them afterwards. You in there, I want to learn about you. I want to understand how this operation works, how this business works, how this industry works. But you're really just trying to get them on your side to when you do need something out of them, you now have them in your bank.
Dude, exactly. Like, I feel like I have thousands of specialists. For the weirdest shit, like, I take the most random emails or meetings, or I did when I was networking, where somebody might be like, and anyways, my sister's husband is a janitor in Pennsylvania. I'm like, does he want to talk? Because, like, I'll talk to him. And then, like, randomly something breaks. And I'm like, actually know somebody
Oh my
who
God,
does
yes.
this.
You're the epitome of I know a guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You find out the greatest mop brand
Yeah.
No,
of
for
all
real.
fucking
And
time.
you're like, who
like the
knows?
sturdiest mop.
Yeah.
Because homeboy in Pennsylvania was like, look, don't fuck with any other mop but this one.
Yes.
But it also doesn't like hurt you to just be nice and talk to people and
Correct.
listen.
Yeah.
It can only benefit you.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you feel better as a human
Yeah.
being.
Yeah.
You know, I love that shit. After I have a solid conversation with a stranger, I'm like,
Yeah, life is good.
We're such
humans
nice
are
people.
humans are okay.
Well, and that's why
why don't we all
Aren't we
just
amazing?
love each other?
Yeah.
That's why I love the den though too, because I come in and I get to like, especially coming out of COVID and being a mom during COVID, like it was so isolating, and so coming here and being where I can just literally I can get work done, or I can chat with other moms, and then I leave and I'm like, I had interactions today. I was face to face with a human being, because I mean, when you're raising babies, it gets bleak sometimes, you know.
So
Suffocating.
So we'll get there, but I want to know. So you guys get married,
Oh yeah.
and then how long do you guys stay in California? When do you guys get to Colorado?
3 years?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
3 years. And then I was like, I want to move again.
Yeah. I was like, okay.
Was the move to okay, go.
The move to Colorado was me. And
Okay, you.
I
Most
wanted-
most of our major life decisions are because of Chandler. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is
yes. So I was like, we got to get out of here. I don't see us here long term. And I know we'll get into the den, but I already had the idea of the den, and I was like, I need a medium-sized pond. Like,
You had the
Did
idea.
you have your kids in California?
I had one.
Okay, wait. So then let's go back, because I want to start with your transition into parenthood then.
Okay.
So you guys get married, you're still living in California, then you have your first kid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, talk about the transition into parenthood.
you ready?
Oh, boy.
You ready?
Yeah.
You ready?
Buckle up.
My transition into parenthood was extremely hard. I have very, very difficult pregnancies. I'm like violently ill
think
in
that-
my pregnancies.
People don't understand what very, very difficult pregnancies are.
Yeah, and I didn't either. So that's part of the whole story, which is that like I was throwing up like 15 times a day, and
Isn't that HG?
so
What's that called?
Yeah, wait, what's it? Hyperemesis.
Hyperemesis.
Grappa,
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So typically, if you have hyperemesis, you're losing weight or like you're not retaining nutrients. But I was excessively eating because that was the only thing that would make me stop throwing up. Sorry. And so I was gaining weight at the same time, and I have a history of eating disorders, and so, but I didn't know that because they were all in denial, and so like there was just like this huge thing happening for me while I was like gaining weight, feeling tremendous amounts of shame when I would go to the doctor's office for a check-in, and they were like, well, you really only should gain 30 pounds, but you've
fucking hate
and
when
a
they say
trigger
that.
warning if we can put that on
Yeah,
there.
we will.
And so like I was just dealing with something that wasn't on the surface yet. I did not know that I had eating disorders. So like that was starting to come up, and I was so sick. And in my job at that time, I was going to Europe. So like L'Oreal was one of my accounts.
Gotcha.
So I would go to Paris. That was my job. And I was like, I can't get on a plane at all, let alone from California to Europe.
Right.
And so eventually I quit my job. And not because the company didn't want to work with me. They were kind and considerate, but I was just like, I don't know what the fuck is going on right now.
How pregnant were you at that point?
5 months.
5
Yeah,
months.
4 or 5 months.
4 or 5 months.
But
And
from day one, you knew you had conceived, and
yeah,
it was like
wild.
intense start from that
Oh
first
my
week.
God.
Really?
Yeah.
Dude.
That fast?
Yeah. It
And
was
had you guys
crazy.
always wanted kids?
Yes.
Okay.
Very much.
Yep.
So
Okay.
so first baby was planned, and then
Planned and immediate, and I want to be considerate if somebody's going through a fertility journey.
Yep.
That
Right.
was not our struggle. And
Right.
that was something that happened very quickly, and so it was like getting into that mind space. But then it was like dealing with
the terrible symptoms were immediate as
oh my
well.
God, they were so
Horrendous.
bad. But I do downplay things because like I don't want somebody to think I'm complaining or that maybe I'm being bad at being
Or that
pregnant.
you're weak, I think. Yeah.
And so I would be like, I'm throwing up, but it's fine. And
Right.
sometimes Jack would
yeah.
come to my doctor's office.
I do
did
the
that.
same thing with Lucas. I'll be spiraling about something with Lucas, and I also am like definitely a hypochondriac, so I like think I have a headache. I think I have brain cancer. But like,
Yeah, her fingers hurt, and she's like, I think I have
arthritis.
There's a blood clot.
No, but he would always say like I would complain to him and worry to him, and then I get to the doctors and I'm like, yeah, so what's going on? Like I feel great,
and I'm
and
like,
he's like,
Where's the list? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I relate to that a lot.
I think a lot of women relate to
Yeah.
that, and I think that that's something that we're working on changing within
Yeah.
the experience. But you like sometimes your symptoms are dismissed,
Exactly.
or you dismiss them yourself, or whatever is going on. I think that was a big transition and a learning. But anyways, I was just violently ill. I quit my job and then was just home alone. And for me, and this was something that I had to work through in my transition to parenthood, but my identity was really deeply rooted in physical appearance. I worked in the fashion industry, and in career being like how I quantify my own self-worth. And so if I didn't have a job and I was rapidly gaining weight, I was like, who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
Like, and it, I think it was hard to even think that that's why I was struggling, because if I say it out loud, that seems vain to me, but like that's what was going on.
Yeah.
And Jack wouldn't get home till like 6:30 or 7, and so it was just so dark, and it was different than what I was anticipating, because I thought that the hardship for me would come from like, oh, you're going to be tired when your baby comes.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was like, baby aside, I don't know who I am, and I don't know when I'm ever going to find her. And that was so scary.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you're avoiding the word, but you became very depressed.
Oh, yes, I had depression, and I would
Correct.
fail I can never remember the test that you take when you go in
Yeah.
to the midwives, but I'd be like, oh, I'm having a bad day. It's totally
Yeah.
fine. And they'd be, unfortunately, because there's, I think, too much pressure on doctors and stuff, but they'd be
Right.
like, okay. And that was my
They
only
really
point of
wouldn't-
contact.
yeah,
Well,
they
I
wouldn't
also
dive
feel like
any
it-
deeper.
Yeah,
right?
there's a million other things going on. And
But I feel like to the point of like the symptoms too is like I think subconsciously we do think that we're not going to be helped, even if we do
Yes.
say
Yes.
what we feel.
Yeah, you hate asking for help.
I hate
in
asking
any
for help, but I think
situation.
that's a deep rooted thing for a lot of women. But I also just feel like if you were to, I mean, first of all, I think prenatal depression isn't as talked about as postpartum depression.
Totally. Yep.
And I also feel like it's talked about, but the support isn't talked about. Like, okay, so if I have it, what's the support? I think
Yeah,
it's like
where do I
scary
go?
because to even want to test for it, because you're like, okay, well, what happens if I do say
yeah,
this?
and then what? Now I have
Yeah.
the burden of figuring this shit out.
Right,
Like,
right.
It's so hard. That's like a huge piece of the den is like, can you just come in and then
Yeah.
have people who care about you, who are hired because they're emotionally intelligent and compassionate, and that have their ear open to what's going on within those transitions. So I lost my train of thought for what we were talking about.
So you were pregnant,
Right.
and then
And it
Yeah.
was a shitty pregnancy.
and it sucked. And if it sucks, that's okay, and you'll get through it, but it's really hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And before we move on, I just, maybe for any dads or husbands listening to this who they're like, my wife right now or my pregnant partner right now is going through a shitty time as well. How do I help? Do you have any advice for those people and how you sort of mentally handled that part of Chandler's life and quite frankly that part of your marriage?
I'll be the first to admit that I didn't handle it that well.
I think that's
because
a
I
great
had no barometer. I had no baseline. I didn't know what was realistic to expect or what was a normal symptom, I guess, even. And I don't think that you had totally understood at that point. There was definitely signs I should have probably recognized earlier. And then we can get into second pregnancy, which was like 2 levels worse than the first one. And I guess I would just say that it's surprising to me when people say that, oh, they went to the doctor with their pregnant wife, but like that seems like it should be table stakes. Like this is such an intense thing. I now look at pregnancy, even any woman that walks through the store, and I think, fuck, they must be having such a hard time. I gotta try and be
Yeah.
so curious about them, be asking about them, making sure they're okay. Like,
Yeah.
let me put a
Right.
pillow down underneath them.
Right.
Like I am here. Like
It
call
was
on
a
me.
big lesson that you
It was
learned.
super important to me, and I'm wildly empathetic to the plight of pregnant women out there.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, yeah,
The disease of
The plight-
pregnancy.
the voyage of pregnancy.
It can be
No,
rough.
but I mean, I think that's really important that you just admitted that, like, maybe you didn't handle it well, because I think as men, we see our partners and our women going through a shitty pregnancy, and there is no blueprint to make on how to make them feel better.
But then you have everyone and their mother being like, isn't this so great? Aren't you so
Absolutely.
excited? It's
Yeah.
so good. How isn't this amazing? And you're like, no, it fucking sucks. I want to rip my hair out.
But
like,
at least your baby's healthy.
yeah, no, I hate
The
that.
shame that
The
comes
shame.
with it. Yeah.
Right.
And it's like you can't fault these people because they're just doing what they know and they want to be positive, but at the same time, it's not everyone's experience.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a big thing in moving towards the den too, that like a lot of people would be like, nobody told me XYZ. And I'm like, nobody can tell you everything. You have a whole ass life you're living. Like, you can't be prepared for every single thing that happens. And like, I think moving into that acceptance for me of like, yeah, they didn't tell me because it didn't happen to them. Like, was something that was really important.
You're also a learner by definition, or by Myers-Briggs, whatever. And that's when you started to get fascinated with the concept of matrescence. That's when you learned. That's when you took that class at Stanford or whatever it was. Columbia. Yeah.
What
It
class?
was Columbia.
Yeah.
Columbia.
Yeah.
Matrescence.
Good try.
What is you said?
Matrescence is the transition into motherhood.
Oh.
So it's what anthropologists have used since the 1980s. And matrescence sounds like adolescence, and that there's so many different things shifting, or putrescence, but like so many things are shifting for you, whether it's your role in society and how they see you, or your hormones, or like your relationship to self. All of these things are changing. And somebody told me about that after I had Sinclair, my first, and then I kind of went down a rabbit hole.
Wow.
Of learning about it.
So you took a class on it.
Yeah. So this is
Got a
going to cover a
certification.
lot of ground. So I
Yeah.
don't know if do you want me to move to?
Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like it's helpful for people to understand that that's even out there. Like
Yes.
taking a class on learning about the transition itself.
Well, it's
Yeah.
also, so much as birth, you have a baby.
Yeah.
What about the baby, as opposed to what about your arc during
Right.
it?
Yes.
Right.
I love it. Go.
Okay. So after I had Sinclair, I started to come out of my fog, and I started, because at that point I was like allowed to talk to other parents because I was one. And so you can like strike up conversations, which I think is what makes being pregnant, especially the first time, very lonely. You don't feel like you are a parent yet in some ways. And so I started talking to people, and I'm like, okay, my issue was pregnancy. This person struggled deeply with fertility. This other person had a very traumatic birth. It doesn't matter. We all have a hurdle that we experience, and that's super uniting to me. And so learning about matrescence, I also got trained as a coach. I didn't want to be a coach, but I think I was like, oh, how do you listen to people without relating? Because that's seems like a big thing in American culture. You're like, oh, me too. And I'm like, well, I just want to like honor their experience, and it wasn't mine. And so I went through that training, and then I found Postpartum Support International, which is like a warm line that you can call into when you're struggling, and they have it up at like doctors' offices as a like struggling, call this number, and I would be the person, one of that I
Really?
answered.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was so like truly like one of the greatest honors of my life, because
Wow.
you're talking to complete strangers,
Right.
who are like this big. They are like in the depths of despair.
And I mean, I think you have to be kind of at rock bottom to like call one of those
Exactly.
lines. Like it's
Absolutely.
your pride has like
Yes.
to be shot.
Yeah, I think that was a rewarding thing for me,
Yeah.
was to delight them in the ability, this like truth that somebody who you'll never meet could make you feel a little bit better in the moment. And so you're listening to them and just like holding space. Sometimes it's 5 minutes. Sometimes I'll talk to somebody for like an hour.
Easily.
Yeah, and then after you talk to them, you can connect them to local resources.
Love that.
So I was like, okay, like this model is interesting, being
Yeah.
able to connect them based on conversation, because maybe somebody doesn't know that they need a pelvic physical therapist, pelvic floor physical therapist, because they didn't even know that existed.
Or
And
didn't even know that a little bit
Yeah.
of pee in your underwear was a big deal after
Right,
pregnancy,
like
or
if there-
uncommon, or-
Anything.
yeah.
Right.
I mean,
like-
I had to go see one because I had painful intercourse the
yeah,
first
a lot
time.
of
There you go.
people
They
Yeah.
don't tell you
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you move on from there, if I may ask, any like specific scenarios or stories that just stick with you and like maybe ones that you're really proud of?
Yeah.
Like, please tell us one.
I have one that I think about all the time, and I hope to not cry in this, but like this person called me and you could just tell that she was like, no one's gonna fucking help me. Like, I'll call this stupid number so that I can fucking tell somebody that I did it, and then I'm gonna just wanna give up. And so we just talked, and it was just like you could feel all of her emotion in her throat, but she wasn't gonna share any of that. Like, she was hard shelled. Everybody had disappointed her. And so we continued talking, and then we come to figure out that she had struggled with a fertility journey, and that had been a dance in her self-worth as a woman, and something that was really hard for her. And then in like continuing to talk, we found out that actually she ended up getting a different egg. Like, I can't remember the terminology, but she used somebody else's egg.
Right.
And not only was it somebody else's egg, but what had happened with this egg was that somebody wasn't going to use this egg. They donated it. Somebody else fertilized it. Then they decided not to implant it and so she took the fertilized egg, which had two completely different people that she doesn't know. And so she was struggling with that, and we're talking about it.
So she was having a baby that wasn't hers biologically.
It wasn't hers, but it's like it wasn't even directly the couples that she had like adopted
So
this
complete
from,
two strangers.
It was this random relationship to this one to her.
And that's something she didn't obviously control. And is that
Well, she
the
fault
fault
a fertilized.
of the
Got it.
Was that the fault?
No. It was on purpose because they needed a
Okay.
fully fertilized egg,
Understood.
and it just happened to be like this phenomenal of a
Right.
situation. But at the end of the day, what we got down to, and where she was like in her backyard screaming out loud, was that she was like, this kid who I worked for 5 years to have is gonna leave me someday because he's just gonna wanna find his biological mom and his biological dad, and I am going to be this vessel that he abandoned someday. And it was so like beautiful to be able to kind of like get to that point with her, and to have this visual of her starting with her voice this big, giving up. And we said, okay, let's go outside. If you need to yell, like, let's go outside. And so she walked outside and like got to that point, and that sticks with me because that really feels like such an honor to me.
Well, even you sharing that story gives me so much more context for why the Den is what it is.
God,
Doesn't
that's
it?
incredible.
Because I mean, you do that in small doses and big doses. I mean, even with your like serious cohorts, when you take postpartum mothers and you give them resources, I mean, you just truly hold everyone who walks into this space, and it makes so much sense now, even hearing that was a part of your journey of getting here.
Thank you.
I would agree.
Fuck, that's a
Yeah.
powerful story.
She does a great job of it. It's clearly a talent.
Unbelievable.
Thank you. I think that like setting the tone so that other people can start doing it is like what's the secret sauce of the Den, is that like in the beginning, I talked to every single person who had come in. Like, that was my job. Like, somebody would be up front, and I would be like, hi, I'm Chandler. Like, how did you hear about us? And then spend time, like, listening. And then slowly somebody else listened to us having a conversation about painful sex or something like that. That was like, oh, we can talk about that here? And now, like, I'm doing some other things right now for the Den, but not on site as much. And I come in, and people are like, and I thought I might need a divorce, but then we went to therapy, you know, and like, they're having these in-depth conversations. And other times they're just having light conversations, but like it's something that so many people are hungry for, going back to like people do want to be heard, and they want to share with one another. And I think that if you have a space where that's permissible, then people will keep doing it.
Yeah.
Which that perspective, that experience you wanted to create for people in the Den plays into everything. The design, the rooms, the colors. It's very well thought out because you wanted people to be able to have natural conversations and be vulnerable with each other.
Well, and that's the key right there too, because I remember I became a mom at 22, and I had none of my friends were having babies. And my mom came from like my gym, like mommy and me kind of like, you know, era. And I was like, that's just so not me. I don't want to participate. I'm so sorry. Like, I don't want to sit here with my kid. And like, I want to talk to other moms. I don't want to like be doing gymnastics on the floor. Yes. And so I remember I would even go to like these mommy circles and it just felt forced. Like, I don't know you. I don't know if I would come up to you in a coffee shop or whatever. And anywhere else that I would take Lennox to, I mean, it was just like bright colors, like all this kid music playing. And I come here and it's very like zen. The colors are really like warm. Everything is
like
catered to the mom.
well.
You feel like
Right.
you feel like an adult. I love coffee. I get a great coffee. I come in and I talk to moms that like the conversation's natural versus like sitting around in a little circle and like being like, okay, so who are you? What's your struggle? I'm like, fucking no.
That reminds me of that sex education
Which one?
scene. Did you guys watch Sex Education?
No.
It
On
is
Netflix?
so
Oh,
good.
you'll love that
It
show.
is
Netflix?
Oh my
so
gosh.
good. You
Yeah.
will love. I
Okay.
cry so aggressively. They do such a good job of covering real things that people go through, and it's based on high
It's a
school,
drama.
but
To be
Yeah.
fair. Yeah.
Oh
it's
my
not-
God.
We're
Yeah,
always
yeah.
looking for
I love that.
a new show.
We need like a laundry folding show.
Right.
no, this is
for sure.
fantastic.
Oh.
But one thing that they
No.
cover.
He's like, sex education's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Oh, okay, thank you. One thing that they cover is mommy groups, and that like,
Oh.
so the woman is struggling, and
Yeah.
she goes to this group, and she like totally unloads and starts crying, and they're like, okay, just pass the sharing stick, and then like someone else is like, I just love their toes, and like that's not. There are plenty of support groups that allow for like
Right.
really beautiful
There's
connection.
a Facebook group for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's like lots of opportunity, but I think you just don't know what you're getting if you're like, but I want to talk about like my aspirations. Am I going to feel shame for having aspirations? And that's what I talk about at this group or whatever it is that I'm struggling with. You just,
Right.
it's like they're sectioned off as very specific things that you're going to talk about at these places. And so we're trying to have something that's like, what's the transition into parenthood? That's what you can talk
Yeah.
about here.
Right.
Whatever relates to that.
So
Right.
let's start with the origins, right? So you were taking these calls. Remind me of the term of the
Matrescence.
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 So say that 10 times in a row. So you go through that whole journey. You've had St. Clair, your first daughter. You said before you knew you wanted to move to Colorado, you knew the concept of the den.
Yes.
Can you walk us through just that like light bulb moment, what you went through creating the concept of the den?
Is that where you
Why?
were driving across
Yeah.
the bridge? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I went to go visit my grandma, who's like truly been senile since the day she was born. Like, there's just a screw
Absolute
missing.
crazy.
She's just
we-
batshit crazy.
She was
Very
nuts.
much
She's
so.
dead, but we love her.
Rest
But like,
in peace.
yeah,
What's
yeah.
dead may never die.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, still present. But like, I went to go visit her because she lived in Marin, and I had nobody to go hang out with, and I was like, what are you up to?
Yeah.
And so I went with Sinclair, who was like 3 months old at the time, and I was talking to her, and I just started crying, and I was like, what are you doing? You're crying to your senile grandma? Like, she's not gonna do anything for you here. Whatever.
Her belief system is the complete opposite. Like she wants you to.
Well,
Yeah.
she wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
to be fair, she was like, "Oh, Chammy," but then she didn't know what to do after that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
whatever,
They weren't
own
taught how
trauma,
to,
like
yeah.
Anyways, but I left being like, "What the fuck am I looking for right now? Why would I go to her and unload?" That's how desperate I am to figure out a space, and I'd like wish that I could just like walk in to like a hair salon and have like 2 women and a gay man be like, "Oh, sweetie,"
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like pamper me.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so what do I want? I just want a space that I can go to that's open to me for a wide range of time. That's not a drop-in yoga class where I hope for 3 minutes that I can share how I'm feeling and then engage, but like, not leave feeling like I made friends. I just want a place that I can go to. And that was over the Golden Gate Bridge, driving
It's
home.
so, I mean, it's so relatable for everyone because I feel like a lot of my friends who don't have kids are always like, we don't want to invite you out because we know it's hard to get out. And I'm like, that's what I want is
Yeah.
to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why the den is so awesome too, because I don't care if I get work done or I talk to somebody, I'm out of the house. And I like don't feel, because I feel like when you're in your walls, I mean, you start to feel trapped. And
Yeah,
so
my guy friends are like, yeah, you call me when you have some time because I know you're super busy. I don't want to impose on you. I'm like, dude, you need to fucking call me.
yeah, yeah, I
Like,
need you.
What are you talking about? That phone call will give me the fucking time, dude. Like,
Yeah,
come on.
absolutely. Yeah.
So you're driving over the Golden Gate Bridge and you have this idea.
Yeah.
Do you immediately tell Jack about it? Like, what's the conversation?
Tell Jack about everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, I tried a new flavor of gum today. Do you have time to talk? I'm gonna call you.
I tried
Yeah.
new favorite gum 4 minutes ago. You gotta tell me. I gotta tell you.
Yeah, like Elf, the scene of an
Yeah,
Elf.
I'm like, I saw you type for a
Oh,
second,
yeah.
and you stopped
That
typing.
scene, exactly.
He's like,
I just
don't
wanna say I love you.
suffocate her, but she suffocates me. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, I definitely told Jack, and I like kind of Jack. We're from the Midwest, but I started ideating on it and was like, I don't know what this is going to look like right now, but I know that I don't want to build it in San Francisco. It'd be too expensive, and it just doesn't feel like home to me.
Yep.
And you would need to feel like home. And so I started taking. This is all kind of like happening at the same time. So my coach training was monthly, and I moved my trainings from San Francisco to Denver so that I could start building a network when I would come out here. And I came out here, and I called Jack hysterically crying. I was like outside of a house that I had asked a broker to show me, and I was
At
like,
like
we need to
8
buy
p.m.
it.
or something. It was dark
so
outside. Yeah.
I was like, we have to buy it. We're leaving. We have to leave right now. And he was like, whoa, like we
Right.
can't just buy a house in Colorado. Like, and I was like, well, we fucking got to figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
and so that kind of
It lit the fire. Yeah.
It did. It lit the
Yeah.
fire.
Why Colorado though?
Yeah, what was that?
Because
Few
you
reasons.
went to Boulder.
I went to Boulder. I had a friend network here, and professional network to some degree. In addition to that, I love the mountains.
Right.
I love just nature. That was one of the draws to California originally, was the access to nature compared to New York City, where we get on a train for 2 hours to finally take an hour-long hike. And we're from the Midwest. San Francisco had no seasons. It was like Groundhog Day every day. We're like, what month is it? I don't fucking know. Where's the seasonality and the differences of the year that
totally.
make it a really nice thing to, I don't know, come together around hot cocoa or
Yeah.
appreciate the colors of spring.
100%.
So we kind of wanted the seasons, wanted the outdoors. Chandler's brother was here. My brother was here at the time. I had the network. And then Chandler's dad also was a CU buff.
'Kay.
Also,
Let's go Buffs.
a resident alumni, or rather resident intern at the Den. He had been planning and actually has since moved to Colorado. So we kind of knew it was going to be a good landing place for us. What else would you add?
No, I would add all of that. It's just
Okay.
that like Jack didn't think that right away.
Yeah.
But I will say, no, Jack is truly a ride or die. Like he's
fair.
gonna fucking join you.
But I knew
and he's
Colorado-
gonna make it
when
a
you
great.
said it wasn't
but
like-
now he's like, and here's what we were thinking.
Yeah.
At the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
No, I just appreciate that about you. That I could be like, it's Alaska. Just listen to me, and then by
right.
month 6,
I
he's
see
like,
pros,
it's Alaska.
lots of pros.
I
Yeah.
always joke I can convince this man of anything.
Yeah,
I
they're
can
very-
talk him into anything.
Yeah,
and he'll go along
game.
with
They're
it.
game. Like they're.
But
he's
that's
happy.
Happy-go-lucky,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it also helps.
Look
that
at him. He's happy.
He's happy.
It also
Yeah.
helps that we fucking love our women.
That's
huh?
true.
Yeah.
And every decision, big one that you've put us onto, has always resulted positively.
Yeah.
So now
Right.
her hit rate's so strong, I
There it
can't
is.
say no.
But
Yeah,
I gotta
yeah,
say, like,
yeah.
is that because you're a happy person?
Doesn't
like,
matter.
Yeah, fine.
Did you
Yeah.
buy the house that you sat out?
We
We
did.
tried to.
Yeah.
We tried to.
Oh, you did.
it
fell
had
through.
structural issues.
fuck.
Yeah, but we tried to.
But that's when you were convinced, okay,
We're
this is
moving
our
here.
new fucking home.
Yes.
This is
But
where I'm going to do it.
At that time, I was working for Slack in its early days, which
Okay.
was now a corporate company that was they had just gone public. And like, there are rules. You can't just leave states and transfer companies. They had to like put in for it and
but I was like,
pull small
I
ultimatum
think
cards.
they'll do it.
Yeah.
You're,
that's
you,
what
they,
man-
you
man would
like,
be like, "It's
they
you,
like
though.
you.
It's you,
Exactly.
right? It's
I
you.
was like,
They'll
I'm
do
gonna
it."
bet on it,
Yeah.
and they did, and
did.
they were awesome.
Turned out to be
Yeah.
the perfect timing. So like
No.
Chandler has this sixth sense of ability to predict things and just energy she feels. And
Uh-huh.
we
You predicted COVID.
not predicted COVID, but predicted that like San Francisco wasn't going to work out and we should find a better situation for our family, young
Whoa.
kid.
And now,
we
like
moved
right
into
now.
It was
our-
the now piece. I think
Right
that
now.
was like
Because when was that?
We moved in March 9th to our house, which is the first day Slack went remote as one of the first companies ever. They were like, this is a
2020.
weird thing.
March
March
2020.
9th, 2020.
And
Yeah.
we moved from a shitty little place in San Francisco where we were struggling. The weather was terrible because it was a bad microclimate, to a large house now where we had additional room for more kids. And it couldn't have been the more perfect place,
Yeah, it worked
perfect
out really
time
well.
for us to
Yeah.
land. So yeah, kudos to your.
And it was the house that we went to
Yeah.
do
Yep,
Halloween at.
correct.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Love that house. Love
Yeah,
that house.
thank
Okay,
you.
so
Us
then
too.
you have Aldi,
Yeah.
and that pregnancy was also just not good.
That was way
Way
worse.
worse.
How does it get worse? I don't know. Like,
Two more symptoms, which are insomnia.
Oh,
If
fuck.
you're
Extreme
if you're
insomnia.
experiencing extreme insomnia, then you should get help for that.
Yeah,
And we
no,
can, like,
that's-
share resources.
Yeah.
and
That
stuff like
is,
that.
100%.
if I can't sleep, I could not even imagine that.
it was for 2 years I went through it, which was way too long, and that was a learning and asking for help. I was like, this is just what's going on. But I also, were you gonna say something?
I was going to say also the come to Jesus about an eating disorder. I mean, this was the eating disorder. Granted, she had it when she was in middle high school. It went dormant for 15 years?
It didn't.
To some degree.
It
Sorry.
did not.
No, it did not. It never.
I just was not made public to Jack.
Yeah.
Okay. Better said. Sorry. And it came back guns a-blazing during the second pregnancy. And
your eating disorder did?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was also sleep-oriented.
Because it turned into a cycle.
Yeah.
And it
Got
really
it.
fed itself. Is it okay if I go into it and we'll just tell people?
I'm gonna do a disclaimer ahead of time about it. We'll
Okay.
do a trigger warning.
Yeah.
And only speak about what you're comfortable with, Chandler.
Yeah,
truly.
I
Yeah.
like, tell
if
anybody
you wanna,
anything.
Yeah, cool.
I had binge eating disorder where I would I'd be restricting way too much throughout the day, and then I would eat when nobody could see me, and I would throw it all up again, and that would put me to sleep. And so that was something that I did starting
The only thing that put you to sleep.
when I was really stressed out. And so that's what I did when I was 17 all the way up to 28. And I was like, that's not an eating disorder. That's how I'm managing my stress. Like, it's not a big deal. I'm not harming myself in a way. Like, I talked to a doctor about it and was like, what about my esophagus? Like, is it okay? I was like super responsible about it.
Wow, very interesting.
And because I was responsible about it, it was even more denial that it was.
Yeah, you were
Right,
like
totally.
You were like
You're
managing
totally
it, quote
mentally
unquote.
Yeah, I
making
was like,
it-
this is fucking fine.
Yeah,
Like,
this is totally cool.
yeah, and so when I had Aldi, or when I was pregnant with him, he was a gigantic child. He was 10 pounds,
10 ounces. 10.
10. And
Yeah, on a 5'4"
Vaginal?
on a 5'4" body.
yeah.
That's a big baby.
He was gigantic, and he continues to be a very big boy, and he needs a lot of fucking food.
Yeah.
And so I was so incredibly hungry, and that was really hard for me because my whole life had been me ignoring that I was
Right.
hungry.
Wait.
Yeah. And then I couldn't, because if I didn't eat every 90 minutes, I would throw up involuntarily. And so it just became this very ugly cycle.
How the fuck are you doing that with a 4-year-old?
2-year-old.
2-year-old, yeah.
How
Or
are you
not to 1-year-old.
How are you doing that?
She had a nanny.
Yeah.
Like I still, it was more of an emotional struggle. That was like
Not well.
Oh,
You were not
actually
present.
no.
Chandler-
That was COVID, so
was
we did
COVID.
not have a nanny during
Chandler
that
was
time.
not present.
No,
I lost
not
a
at
year of
all.
Chandler,
Right.
At least, yeah. But then I felt so much shame because then I felt like I was abandoning my daughter because I
Right.
was just like so lost and I didn't know what was going on. And then I had Aldi and started building the den, and the insomnia just got so bad that I thought I was going to have to be like hospitalized.
Yeah.
And so we got to a point where I had to go to a treatment facility.
How the fuck do you build a business like the Den while you're going through all this at home?
It was like my escapism.
Wow.
It was like when I went,
It was purpose. You found
Yeah.
purpose.
Ooh.
yeah, it
Good for
helped me to
See the light at the end of the tunnel.
and
like,
work through the shame of the whole experience because
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm doing this because I have experience
Right.
Yeah.
like this.
There are others out there who need me to go do this.
Yeah, and quite
So,
frankly,
yeah.
like this will make me not die.
Yeah.
Like this
Yes.
will make.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if I think about the Den, I won't think about like the end of my life.
Yes, there's something for me to direct my brain to,
Yeah.
which my brain is sick right now.
Yeah.
And so how do I do that? So I did that. I went to treatment for 6 weeks, which was hard in a marriage because I was partially hospitalized.
Right. So, Jack, are you like kind of letting Chandler call the shots? Or are you kind of like helping facilitate like how to get you help?
It's hard. It's a hard thing.
Yeah.
It seems selfish to think that I need anything when she's going through near death. She was, and there's
Yeah.
levels of suicidal.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so
Well, I mean,
that was hard. I didn't know how to be there for her in this worse state than the first time around. I was like, okay, well, I can at least do this, and I can keep the house in order, and I can take care of the baby, and I can get our bills. Like I can do the operational stuff, but it's still I didn't necessarily know how to attack the mental state, and parts of myself definitely were compromised, but it didn't matter. It wasn't important. Like we just kept going. The goal was just to keep going. I thought that things would get better, and looking back, there was like, oh wow, those things only have gone downhill the last 16 months. Like when is this going to get better? And she had to be her own catalyst.
My mom was.
Your mom. Oh,
Yeah. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
She screamed at me in a field
Yeah.
in a
did?
good way. Because like you know, my mom could like cut me the bone in some ways, and I
Yeah.
love her for who she is. But there's other ways where she's the only one who could snap me out of something.
Okay, so then you were in treatment for how long?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Where was the den in all of this?
The den was, we had a lease agreement, and I was going through interviews for a bank loan. So I took one of my interviews with a VP at the treatment facility. And I want to be really careful about how I'm saying that I'm proud of this, because if I needed to unplug, I would have completely unplugged.
Right.
But I did that because it helped me remember why I wanted to get out of the treatment facility.
100%.
So
And not fucking drive to the nearest cliff and jump the fuck off of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, but I don't want it to feel like if somebody else needs that they're like, oh, I feel shame that I'm not getting a bank loan or something.
Well,
that was my coping mechanism to focus on it. And I didn't do tons of stuff, but I did go through my bank loan process partially through that. And yeah, got my SBA loan.
It was full steam ahead, to be
Yeah.
clear. Like once you have the lease, you better fucking go, and
Yeah.
you better go fast, because every day you're gonna be pouring against some level of financial ownership.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was pretty intense and amazing to see you managing both those together. And she would come home to sleep, so she had the full day
Okay.
program. Like, not a single calorie could be consumed in the house. It was going there the first thing in the morning. So
they feed you.
they
Got
feed
it,
you.
got it, got
Everything's
it.
measured. There's therapy throughout the day. You had some downtime, but like you didn't really you were managing business strategy at the same time.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
I did unplug. I told my team that I had a surgery.
But I feel like, wait, what team?
I had architect.
A loan
and I
broker.
had a
Okay,
loan
okay.
broker.
Yeah.
People
For
who
this
helping you
spot
with
that
this.
we're in right now.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
But I think to your point, Jack, like this was your purpose and this is your passion. So I feel like to take away the passion while you're also trying to get better, like, don't you want people to find passion?
Yeah.
That
True.
helps people get out of it, you know?
That was a huge thing for me, was like in treatment, a lot of people have eating disorders when they're like 18.
Yeah.
So I was with a lot of people who are much younger than me. And I was like, man, I have a lot to get back to right now. I'm not 18 years old trying to figure out where my life is going to go. That seems like a way harder mountain to climb in getting through this sickness.
Yeah.
That
So I
perspective did
wanna-
help, yeah.
What'd you say?
The perspective of who you were in there with seemed to help you a lot.
Yeah. And they were all so lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I want to transition into like how you actually got the steps that you took to get the den off the ground running, you know, because I feel like there are so many people who have an idea like you did and want to create like, especially a brick and mortar, so like a space.
Yeah.
So kind of walk us through, I mean, even from like coffee chats that you took, like how you kind of, you know, networked and got people to help you with this and how you actually got it to where it is.
Yeah, I reach out to so many entrepreneurs first to just be like, hey, like, can I buy you a coffee or support your business somehow, and ask you some questions? Because I think that's a big one. Like, you should be supporting someone's business if you're going to ask them questions. And so I would just listen to their whole story. And I tried not to go about it like, this is what I'm trying to learn. I was like, I'm just going to be fully present to this conversation.
that.
And then I'd take a meeting from that meeting. And so that was kind of the networking piece of that. I was meeting like 4 people a week.
Tons. I mean, also getting the full backstory, you actually understand what it requires to have the sweat equity and the perseverance, and like it really rounds the whole story. Just like you guys are seeing a story of the den that you never heard before. I think you're pulling people aside and getting that is a big key to your success, because you have heard so many stories, but also like plug to Guy Raz and how I built this podcast. You've been listening to that since you were like
yes, I was also
15,
listening to
16
those
or whatever
things.
when it
Oh my God,
started.
obsessed.
Because like
Yeah.
hearing the story of how people get off the ground, it's never a complete linear
No.
curve. It
Right.
is bounces and shifts and jumps and pivots, and like you've had those in extreme levels already in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Yeah, I think I was just working on taking a permission away that was like, there's no right way to do this.
Yeah.
So I just have to start. And like, how do I start? And to this day, like everything that you do, like for example, I was at Costco this week because I go to Costco on Tuesdays, and I was like, this is pre-sale or whatever, so that I don't get taxed on the items. And they were like, oh, your sales tax license expired. And I was like, could have fooled me. I didn't know that. Like, you're just always learning something no matter what, instead of like, and it was fine. I'm not like operating illegally, but like, I just was like, oh, well, Costco told me that I needed to renew my sales tax license because it's on a calendar year, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And like, there's just so many different things that I was trying to believe like you don't have to get it right, and like everybody's making mistakes, but actually the mistake is what like makes you know the next step that you need to take. So that was
Burning the
what
dish, baby.
yeah, over and over and over again. Like, oh my
All
God.
the time.
Yeah. So yeah, that was, I started talking to people, and then Layla, who owns the Denver Cat Company on Tennyson here in Denver, she's one of my mentors, and she was like, you need a space. Like, you just have to get a space. And I was like, I don't have funding yet. And she was like, you need a space so that you can prove what you're funding.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'll do that.
Big lesson there, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's also for anyone listening who wants to start a business.
Yeah.
The financial risk. Like,
Yes.
talk about how you even get, like, I guess, like, the courage to do that. Because I think that's the biggest thing for even Lucas and I starting this podcast. I think the biggest thing is, like, well, I don't have the money yet, so I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Or, like, how am I going to find the funding or whatever? So maybe talk about, like, how you guys navigated that conversation of, like, the financial risk of opening something.
As a married couple as well, like, what does that look like?
Let me take it? Oh, yeah, I mean, we have a lien on our house, so we have pressure to make this thing work. We have had I've had good sales years. We had some nest eggs saved up, certainly, and we poured it all into Den. Like, other people friends of mine are into crypto or into other things, and
Yeah.
putting their money in these different places, and it's an investment they're making for the long term, just like a 401k. The Den is our investment for the next
That's our
20, 30, 40
strategy.
years. Like, we're not focused on, what Roth IRA we need to contribute to. It's more of like, let's take a big risk. I know Chandler well enough. I'm willing to bet on her, as is she. She's willing to bet on herself. I've seen how much she's poured into it. And it is one of those things where we weighed, or you weighed, rather, a lot of the pros and cons of what type of financial investment do we get. Is it, do we go VC? Do you go small business loan? In your case, I mean, it's tough because you have great business background and acumen, but you don't have small business ownership background. So that was one of the reasons you went the SBA
Actually,
route.
that was held against me through an SBA.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. But I wanted to go, well, first of all, it would be hard to go to VC, right? They're looking for like massive scalability. But I think
Mostly, yeah.
not that I had like investors knocking at my door,
Right.
but I didn't even think about it because I know that I have a very specific vision for it. And I was
Right.
like, I would rather have the financial burden of having to pay this loan back and getting this looking the way I want it to look before maybe someday I do ask for investment. But I'm like, no, I have a track record now. So there's some kind of leverage there that shows that like when Chandler does it with her vision, it works correctly. And so I had to get a loan for that.
Yeah, and then you get an investor, and then you have their opinion.
Yeah.
And,
And I think it can be beneficial, but I think because they're so connected and they have experience, but I was like, well, let me be an equal stakeholder here and come to the table like, yeah, and here's mine. This is my experience, and you're investing in that.
So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, part of it is knowing our relationship. So you ask as a marriage, like, how do we manage funds, trust each other, have belief, want to push each other. It's also knowing yourself very well. Chandler is somebody who needs a fire under her ass, or it doesn't get done. And
Right.
so
I think I'm the same exact way.
the second that
Yeah.
there was a space, I saw a whole new person. Like she was in strategy mode. There was ideas, there was designs, there was a lot happening. But like the second that happened, it was like a whole new switch, and you haven't stopped. Like the machine is only growing at a higher RPM capacity than it was even a year ago today.
Whatever
So-
that means.
Layman's
Okay. I
term,
don't
please.
speak cars that well, but anyways, my point is that knowing what motivates each other,
Yeah.
and knowing what's going to keep our family together and what's going to incentivize both of us. Like, yeah, there are days where maybe I'm not the best corporate employee, but I'm here at the Den to help this thing grow because it's our investment strategy.
He's also a killer corporate employee.
You know what?
Just have to say that.
Yeah.
In case somebody watches.
But I think that that's helpful. And I think that's also.
Covering my ass. Sorry.
No,
I'm good at Slack.
I did not do my job. Yeah, no, he really does. Anyways.
No, but I think that's helpful because I think that it helps to know. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people who are like, wanting to start a business, but their partner's not on board, or like wanting to start a business and their partner can't contribute.
We've seen that, by the way.
Yeah.
With friends of ours.
I was gonna say, I
Or
don't think
partners.
Jack has ever
gonna
not
mention
been
that.
on board
Yeah.
with anything ever.
Oh, yeah.
We've seen
Sorry.
them not be on board,
Yeah.
and this is an investment, our relationship.
Yeah.
I knew how happy this was going to make her, and how on purpose, and how driven. And yes, if the Den's successful and it scales nationally, and we have hundreds of locations, and it's tied to every major hotel chain, like cool. But at the end of the day, it doesn't need to be. It needs to be something that she's proud of and that I'm proud of, and it keeps growing. And that's what it's been so far. I don't have expectations the way you do. I have expectations for you.
I was like, it does need to be.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's more about how it's been for you as an outcome than it has right now about how, like,
That makes sense.
I'm not trying to look for the next. I can't plan that far. It's also with little kids. You guys know how it is.
Yeah.
You have little kids, you can barely look a year out.
Well,
So
that's what my question is too. How do you manage having a full-time corporate career, you being the ship of this, of the den, and then also having 2 kids? Like, how do you guys navigate that?
we're so glad her dad is here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I want to say, like, at first I felt shame if, like, oh, they're going to our friend's house who has kids, or my dad's going to pick them up, or my brother's going to pick them up, or Jack's mom is going to fly into town. And then I was like, no, that's amazing. Like, I love that they can trust so many other people. And I am not a parent who's a parent watches this and is like, I disagree with you, my parents. But, like, I'm not really a parent who's like, hey, we do it this way.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm like, when they're at your house, do it
You're
out of my
way.
control.
100%.
Yeah.
My favorite thing to tell babysitters, anyone who's watching our kids, hey, what we don't know won't hurt us.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
When we leave, do whatever.
Whatever
the
strategy
fuck
you need to employ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that my parents are entrepreneurs, and
Well, that's a
I
very
was-
big miss that we didn't talk about
Yeah.
earlier. Yeah. That's one of the reasons she's had that itch for a long time.
or the like trust in it.
The knowing that you could make it work.
And
Yeah.
knowing how bad it can be and how tough it can be.
Yeah.
You've seen your parents struggle in many ways too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we were taken care of by lots of other people. If my parents had something, and my parents were also very present. And my memories of childhood are plenty of things that I'm like, oh, I don't want to do these things because that's normal to experience that. But also, I loved them, and I felt really good about them as parents.
Yeah.
So kind of remembering that.
I could so relate as well. You
Yeah?
see the good, for sure. I mean, growing up with my parents who ran the restaurant, that was their life 7 days a week.
my God.
I lived at my grandparents' house every weekend of my life. They dropped me off Friday morning and picked me up Monday.
Yeah.
From the age of 3 to 14 years old. But they were still so, looking back, they were always so present. I always loved and adored them so much. And I saw what it was like for the restaurant to, like, go out of business and, like, the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. So
And it sounds like you saw what it was like to also not have your parents be your one and only.
100%.
Like-
Probably created a more independent Lucas than
Oh, it
you would
sure
have been,
did.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, my grandmother, every lesson and every, like, thing that I sort of find myself, like, chuckling about, like, oh, I learned that from grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my parents they're totally cool with that.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not like, but I am your mother.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
how
there
you
are
are. You're
boundaries,
like,
but
right,
it's
yeah.
like, our son says like these dumb little like, yeah, baby, and that's because my dad says
Like, where is
stupid
that
shit
from?
like that.
Yeah. Oh, Jay.
Yeah. It's so funny to watch them repeat other adults,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, I'm present. I rub my daughter's back every night. Like,
Yeah.
there's things that are consistent in tradition, but I like that other people shape them.
It's so funny when, like, you don't have people around and you're like, oh, where's my village? And then you have your village and you're like, well, I feel mom guilt now. And it's like,
Yeah, it's like
you wanted
never
the
win.
village.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the thing. And
Yeah.
I also think there's something to be said for, like, seeing your parent go and do something big
Yes,
and be successful
absolutely.
Yeah.
and chase their dreams and not stop their life because they had kids.
Correct.
And I think whenever I ever have a moment of, like, feeling mom guilt because, I'm at the den, not working on my computer, not, like, playing with my kids or something, I'm like, no, I want them to see that I put myself first in certain situations
Yeah.
and I worked hard, because that's going to teach them that they can do that too.
It's
What
like
you
a-
see is what they're going to believe.
It's like the long-term investment of parenthood.
Yeah. Yes.
That won't pay off, obviously, right now as their children.
Yeah.
But when they are adults,
You appreciate
that's
it.
when you'll actually see the payoff of the appraise of, like, when I was a kid, I saw you fucking working your ass off. And
Yep.
that's why I'm so
Yeah.
successful today.
Yeah, I think
And-
about that with my parents too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, they'll be highly adaptive people because they've been in so many scenarios, situations, different parenting styles, different coaching styles, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, I think it's a great way to raise kids.
If you can.
If you can.
Not everybody
Yeah,
has all
totally.
of the contacts that we have, so I want to acknowledge that. But
Yeah.
Good point.
working for us. Yeah.
So you get the lease, and then how long from the lease did you guys open?
Get the lease in May, right?
No, the lease negotiation was from March to August.
Were there
Oh, it's so
multiple
long, yeah, yeah.
locations in the realm, or was it like, oh, I found this place, I love this place, I want this place?
There were plenty of locations that I looked at, and then I saw this. I didn't want to be in the Highlands, actually. I wanted to be closer. We live on the other side of I-25. And, but I walked in, because there's lots of things that I learned through talking to people that were like, if you're going to put a cafe in here, then your plumbing lines need to be like 2 inches wide or whatever versus. And so like you need to be able to save money. So if something was a cafe before it turned over, then you're going to save money on that, or like how it's zoned. So I came here, but then I took the documents to Wellington Web, which is our city building. And I said, can you please look up this address and pull all the information you have on it? And so then I talked with the city, and they were like, okay, well, you need, if you think you're going to go for this permit, you need like 7 spaces. Okay, that place has it. And it just had so many things that I was going to need in order to go in that direction.
Another testament to being highly curious and essentially
that's
your own little interrogator.
I'm like networking.
Peeling
That's
back layers.
networking right there.
Yeah.
I went to the Wellington Web building every week.
You got friends deep
Dude,
in the
I was there
Wellington
all
Web
the
building.
time. Yeah. I would go I was trying to find somebody who I could take out to coffee, and I got one at the Wellington Web building, and I was like, I'm never letting her go. Laura, love you. Yeah.
Shout out to Laura. Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so then from I lost my train of thought.
From was it?
Oh,
Leeds?
from the
August.
lease?
August
Yes,
to
yes,
opening.
yes.
Okay, so from August to February, we were doing construction.
Okay.
So, and I was moving forward with a GC and an architect without closing my loan yet. So that was kind of a really riskier piece of it was like, yeah, we got it. We're fine.
Yeah.
And then like starting to spend our money on it.
Yep.
And like moving in that direction and then closing on our loan. Because I had to go through lots of different interviews and like get kind of tested from the bank on like, well, if this happens, what would you do? And like, what do these numbers mean? And
before
what are
they
based
give you a
off of?
fuck ton of money.
Oh my God, so much testing.
Ooh, interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, and so that took months of interviews and stuff.
Was that nerve-wracking, those interviews, or were you walking in super prepared, like, I got this? Like, they'd be crazy not to give me this money.
I think both.
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect balance of preparation and charisma. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, also you've done a lot of business meetings, a lot of international operations business meetings. Like,
Yeah.
she knows how to conduct
Yeah.
herself. That will win people over.
But
I've
there
seen
were
it. It's fun to
things-
watch. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He's like, it's super hot. I like it.
Yeah.
But there were things out of my control. Like what could have been really a ding against me was I've never even worked at a coffee shop before.
Yeah.
And they were like, so you want like this much for FF&E, furnitures, fixtures, and equipment to put into a cafe, and you never even worked at one? Like, and so it was like that stuff where I
But
was
then
like,
you'd spin the story.
yeah.
Yeah, what
like,
do you say to
but
that?
can I? Well, I was like, well, my husband worked at one, and like he's a part of this, and you're gonna take his house if it doesn't work. So you better believe his ass is gonna be there. Like, he's gonna be helping.
Yeah.
And
He is. Yeah.
and my projections, so like when you're making projections, if you're seeking financing and you're making projections, I was like, oh, these have to be perfect. And everyone was like, no, they fucking don't. You're just trying to tell a story and prove to someone that you can speak in numbers.
Wow.
Like,
But I will
so
also say, your business plan was what, 40, 50
my
pages?
business plan was really long because I was like, no, we're doing something different, and it has a lot more to do with like mental health and connection. So my business plan is more of a story.
Yeah.
That
It's
is
a story,
like,
but it had competitive analysis.
yeah.
It had
What
business
are
opportunity.
What are your tips for anybody who for like a business plan? Because like I feel like that is the first step for so many people. But how do you even conduct one?
I'll tell you how I do it. Everybody is different, but I was like, okay, what's the outline? Like, what I based it off of first and foremost was a minimum viable product. So, like, at the very core, what's your business?
Got
Even
it.
if your idea is this big, like, if you can only get like the lowest amount of money, what's that minimum viable product, MVP? And so I worked on like figuring out what my MVP was, and then I can't
Was
remember.
that like coffee shop?
Yeah, coffee shop for parents,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
And then it was, wait, I just lost my train of thoughts. Oh yeah, business landscape or something. It's a 1-page document that you fill out as a business plan, and it just starts asking you questions and like, can you fill out this 1 page based on your idea? And then I took that 1 page that I filled out and I put it into an outline, and then I started filling it out from there. And because I thought it was really important to incorporate data in a more mindful way, because a lot of business plans will have like a section of data, and I was like, no, I want data like threaded through this so that it's a story. And so just anytime I saw a relevant article or something like that, I would save it.
Citing. Yeah.
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 I mean, it's really like writing a paper, but you had tactical data and you had like macro theoretical data, like
Yeah.
where matrescence is going and how
Got it.
that's a movement around the
Oh,
third
wow.
space.
Yeah.
And how religion's declining.
So you're kind
and
of
that's
like
an
selling
important-
it too.
Absolutely.
Hugely.
Yeah.
And it had to be like, I wanted people to walk away from the business plan being like,
How can I get
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can I get
like-
involved? Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn,
thought through
I
this.
missed the ball on matrescence.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I took months to do my business plan.
Yeah.
And I would send it to people and be like, what do you think? Like, where are gaps? Does this tell a story? And I was less worried about somebody ripping it off because I was like, the way I'm going to do it is going
Yeah.
to be only my way. So
Yeah.
I'll just send it to people.
Yeah.
So I did the
for what it's worth, there are templates out there. So for people who are wondering, like there
Yeah.
are templates.
Yeah,
that
that
exist.
was that was gonna be a question.
The
of mine.
questions that you
The
ran
outline,
through, like
right?
those
The
lists
outline.
are out there. Like obviously you could use like ChatGPT to help fill something in, but like it'll help you
But
figure
don't.
out where your gaps are. That's
Yeah.
the point of
Yeah,
the
and,
questions.
and also I leaned on the library a lot because the library has this guy who I can't remember his name. He's so nice, but in Denver at least. And then actually in all libraries, Jack's mom was like somebody
She's very pro library. We'll just
loves
say.
Yeah.
libraries.
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
sorry, Jody. I cannot remember your role, but like, but anyways, the libraries have so much information and they are so fucking kind.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this is what I'm trying to do. And I would meet with him. Like, I think the library had a quota of like 3 times and he was so nice that I'd be like, it's me again. And like, I would
Pull
sit.
more data for you.
Yeah, he
pull-
pulled
yeah.
so
Yeah.
much data for me.
Wow,
and
that's awesome.
and they have different examples of real businesses who donated their business plans. And so I read through real business plans and would like draw upon that kind of stuff. And then while I was writing it, I would reach out to people whose business plans were relevant and had some mentors like this person who runs a coffee shop that I was like, oh, I'm trying to figure out this. Oh, I also went to Texas Coffee School
Oh, yeah.
in Texas for 3 days. So I learned a little bit more of the coffee side
Yeah,
of the
that makes
business
sense.
model there
That
too.
totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're painting a very buttoned up picture of yourself, and don't want to discredit
No,
that at
take it
all.
down.
Yeah, but you'd think that she has like Trello boards of all the things she needs to do
Oh
and
my God.
consume and like all these lists and projects that she needs to tackle, but she doesn't operate her brain like that. Mine
Yeah.
is much more like that right brain style. She's much more creative.
Yeah.
And I guess the point I would make for listeners or for those who want to seek entrepreneurship, like you don't have to be being buttoned up is not a priority until it's the
Until
important
it's a
meeting.
priority.
Yes.
Right,
Like
right.
Yeah.
organizing your thoughts is important. Documenting your strategy, like getting that down is a key piece, but it doesn't need to be, again, this same linear path or this like perfectly organized thing, because otherwise you'll get stuck in the details as opposed to
Yes.
keeping the strategy in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So for anybody who maybe hasn't come into the Den or like it doesn't live in Denver, what would you kind of describe it as, or like could you paint a picture for people, or what is your purpose really for the Den for people who might not have been here yet?
The purpose of the Den is to make the transition into parenthood more communal, and it's going to be hard no matter what, but like, can we make it a more connective experience with a little less shame and a lot more empowerment and curiosity? And so right now, the way that we do that is through like an environment that promotes the coexistence of parent and child, or caretaker and child. So like the way that we've designed the space is like, okay, we have this seating area, but we've moved it, but then there are toys interspersed throughout it, and there's, you know, a laptop bar overlooking more play, or the classroom has a place that you can sit down and there are toys. Like, we really wanted to create a space where you're like, I don't feel like I have to be hovering over my child. So that's like how you experience it. And then we connect a ton with practitioners. So like every Friday we have an AMA, and Ask Me Anything, where a different practitioner is just coming for you to meet them. And we're working on like classes, specialty or recurring, just so that you have a one-stop shop as an adult, and that which sparks connection to other stops. I want people to have lots of access in their lives, but one place that they're like, no matter what, like I could just get up and I could like have one tit out of my bra and just be at the Den, and I'm okay and accepted.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I get out of it too is like resourcefulness. Like I come here and I know if I have a question or need anything, like I could come to you, or I could talk to another mom about it. And then also that community piece. But before we move into sort of like asking actually about like recipes and food, I want to ask both of you, because obviously, I mean, you've been successful. What do you think is the key ingredient to being successful? Or creating something that is like successfully accomplishing and achieving something?
One thing.
Or
Do you
a
have it?
couple.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's one key ingredient. I think that, which sucks to say because you can't like go and like repeat that, but I think that paying attention to yourself, like we talked a lot about listening to other people, but if you also spend time listening to yourself and understanding how you operate, like what works for me is networking. And I felt really guilty about that in my corporate career because when we would take Gallup Strengths Finder at that time, my strengths were all about connecting with people, every single one of them. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm so disproportionate because everybody else is like, you know,
strengths here and strengths there.
Here and here. And I was like, oh, fuck, like I suck and I'm not. And then I was like, oh, that's just how I operate.
Right.
And if you can appreciate how you operate, then build the business plan the way that you want to build it, or like connect with people the way that you want to. Or like my brother is somebody who like learns a lot from researching, not as much direct conversation. And it's like, okay, maybe we can get to the same answer, but we did it in our respective ways. And I think especially as an entrepreneur, you're going to want to make time to pay attention to who you are. You don't need to know yourself.
Like honoring your own approach, your own recipe.
Totally.
One thing I was going to say, sort of an add-on to that, is we spend a lot of time in our early years, even collegiate years and post-collegiate, following passions that were set up by our parents. You know, where my dad's an engineer, and so I'm going to go into engineering, or my dad would appreciate it, or my mom wants me to go be a lawyer or be in finance, whatever it might be. My original answer that I was going to have to your question was going to be sweat equity. It's just like working your ass off. But I second guess it now, thinking it's find the thing that makes you want to give sweat equity. Find the thing that gives you that purpose, that gives you that excitement, because then you'll bust your ass for it. And sometimes it's sales and it's money. Other times it's helping people with the journey through parenthood. But like being able to find that thing, which is the same thing as listening to yourself, it's really hard for some people to do. It was hard in some cases for me to like, what do I want to do that's for me, that would make me feel good versus what somebody else would want as an expectation of me.
Because it's like
What were you gonna say?
That's very specific to you, which is a great example of like Jack really likes to please people. And so like having that like, wait, like what am I doing this for is a good check-in, and being patient, because like going out and finding it can be a huge burden. Instead of being like, well, I trust that if I'm just paying attention and being present in my life, then there are certain things that reveal themselves to you, and then you can be curious.
Totally.
But maybe it's not like, you know what I mean? Like you're on a ship finding.
That's what I was going to ask you, because I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I used to do a lot of mindset and wellness coaching, and I think it can seem unapproachable of like, oh, I have to find my purpose. Like, oh, this is like so overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask, like, and you mentioned too a few times like Myers-Briggs and like things that might have helped you guys like find that thing. What would you say to someone who is kind of like on that path of finding themselves and finding that passion, but they get overwhelmed by it? Like, what are maybe some things that helped you?
I think I am somebody who's just not good at processing my thoughts all the time, or emotions. And I think sometimes just writing them down to understand like, what are the things that I appreciate? Or even like if it's a pros and cons list. I have this job. Something about this job feels good. What is it? Like, these are the things I really appreciate. These are the things that I don't appreciate. That helps you like move towards, oh, okay, I need to be thinking about opportunities that are more like that.
Right.
I think is just a very simple exercise that folks can do. I don't know if that's too trivial.
No, I love that.
I
do that.
Good.
I would do that with my
great-
clients.
yeah,
It's
great
I would call it
exercise.
like a joy list. Create a joy list, and
Correct,
from that
yeah.
pull it out.
Could you imagine if you're like you're doing something and you just cannot think of any pros to it? That'll give you a pretty solid answer of if you should be
where to steer the ship.
You know.
Yeah. I work so different from Jack because I learn how I feel by listening to other people a lot of times. And so I watched like every episode of Chef's Table, if you've ever watched that.
No.
Oh
You
my
guys.
God, it's
Wait,
so
is that the
good.
one? Is that the one where all the international chefs come together?
No, it's not a competition.
Oh, it's not a competition.
focuses
Okay.
on-
So
Cinematic.
I'm not in that
Cinematic.
industry. But whatever, it's really well done.
Chef's Table. No, I see it all the fucking time.
Yeah, you'll get it.
You
but
would
like,
love it, yeah.
it follows a chef every episode and what that chef's journey was. And
We gotta watch that.
Guys,
so good.
it's up your
I mean,
alley.
it's very
Yeah.
relevant.
It's
to
so relevant.
Kind of my life right now.
It really ties in, and like chefs, I mean, they're all different, but they seem to have a little bit of like an artistic nature to them and how they experience life and like
A little rough around the
Joie
edges.
de vivre.
melancholy sometimes. And
Yeah.
like, I loved listening to their stories. 'Cause, like, I don't want to be a chef, so because of that, it didn't make me feel the pressure, because I'm not trying to be a chef. I'm just learning their stories.
Right.
But I'd like listen, and like some chefs were like, yeah, and then I just like fucking took off and was amazing. And some were like, I had this. There was one guy who was like,
my 5th restaurant,
or that was one who was like, we were losing money, and I said, I'm going to give it 7 years because I care about this. And the 7th year is when they started making money. And
Wow.
like, we can't do that at the Den, but like,
Yeah.
that is like,
To be clear.
yeah, that will not work for us. But like that worked for him, and he did find his path. But what the consistency is that they all trusted themselves.
Yeah.
and had passion for food.
Yeah. You love making
Yeah.
moves off of learning and knowing other people's stories.
It's so
that shit
fulfilling
is
to
like
me.
so
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
Which
love
the
that.
Den gives her an amazing opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also
Well,
exhausting.
I also feel like, because I whenever I watch like a documentary, it gives me so much fire under my ass and like inspiration.
It's like the only things I watch, quite frankly.
But like I watched like the Taylor Swift documentary,
So
and I'm
good.
like, should I be a fucking singer? Like I literally like.
See, yeah, Amanda's problem is she'll watch Chef's Table and she'll be like, I'm gonna go to the kitchen.
opening-
real quick.
My turn. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to learn how to
No,
saute
but my
this."
point to that is I think when you see other people doing cool things, it tells you, oh, I can do a cool thing too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just find your cool thing, and then you have that fire to do it.
Right. Have
Yeah.
the patience and then find something that you're willing to put the sweat equity in that like
Yeah.
doesn't seem like sweat equity because you just love it. Just it's your purpose.
Because you're going to have to make consequences and choose alternatives. Perfect example, like your night school with cooking that's a lot of burden on both of you, but
Totally
it means
is.
a lot. So
Yep.
it's one of those things that if you didn't have the passion, there's no way you'd be able to get yourself to do it. Especially
Absolutely.
For the amount of
You
weeks
better
that
cook
have.
us up some fire dinners.
That's right.
Swear
It's
to
an
God.
investment for you
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, it
Yeah.
definitely is. It definitely
Yeah.
is. But yeah, you're doing a bedtime routine.
I usually do anyway. Come on
I
now.
mean, it's a pretty joint effort there.
We don't have to get into the
What was
logistics.
the last bath time that you've
Oh, that's not my
led?
role. That's not my duty.
Monday and Tuesday nights? You told me?
Yeah, it will be.
Scheduled. Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, night class, I won't be
Yeah,
there.
Monday
I
and
see, I
Tuesday
see.
nights.
Yeah.
I was like,
The
we
one who brought it up.
we rarely.
We're still
Totally
on this.
forgot we
Oh
were-
shit, Mondays and Tuesdays. That's
We're
wild.
like,
How'd you choose that?
Fuck, they need a bath tonight? Oh no.
Oh, totally
yeah.
skip some baths. Yeah, but
Okay, transitioning into like actual cooking and recipes, can you share a recipe with us that either was like in your family or maybe a go-to that you guys love?
Or but first, before you do that, like Chandler, what's your favorite meal of the day? Breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
dinner.
Dinner. That's me too.
That's you.
That's my favorite.
Oh
too.
my God.
What about you? Would you say dinner as well?
It used to be breakfast. I've been on I'm having struggles with breakfast right now.
Isn't an
Why is
ab.
that?
It's because I'm trying to, as I'm now in my mid-30s, like control weight, and like eating oatmeal or cereal or other
I hear
in
you.
the morning is not a strong strategy. And
Yeah.
Got it.
so I'm like omelet every morning right now for the
Yeah.
last 2 weeks,
Really is.
and
He's
I'm,
been
I'm
on the
committed. But I probably lean more towards dinner, although I'm a huge sandwich guy.
Oh
I
yeah, dude.
love-
nothing
So Jack
better
likes
than
them all.
He loves them all. Yeah,
You
exactly.
like that? See, I did that.
I will. Yeah, I mean, it's like a lunch sandwich, or like just, I mean, dinner. Come on.
Dinner. Like
come on.
all the best foods are permissible at dinner. You're like, do I want to eat this fettuccine Alfredo in the middle of the day and like keep working?
Right.
No.
Sleepy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, for sure. But if you could think of any recipes or like some of your go-to favorite things to make at home, or things that have just like impacted your life growing up, what would they be?
Well, a year and a half ago, we discovered, more like a year ago, that Chandler's got celiacs. Celiac, excuse me.
Celiac.
Extra
She
celiac.
has the
yeah.
celiac.
Call me out. Someone's gonna come for
Multiple
me.
celiacs. Yeah.
She actually has
Anyways,
the rare version.
You haven't heard about the one with the S at the end?
we have a channel in Slack of like all of our favorite recipes, and like we just comb through it sometimes. And
Oh,
we go to
cool.
like, which one do we want to make? Because it's more digital, like our parents said.
Right.
Cookbooks.
So it has
Yeah.
to be gluten-free these days.
And we're just realizing that so many of those are out now. I don't know why this is coming to mind, but I really like that one that we used to have from Good Egg from San Francisco, which is
One of Jack's
oh,
favorites.
so it's a one pot or one pan meal, which is
Love
the best.
those.
just solves a lot of problems.
Yes.
Sliced sweet potatoes that have like a Mexican spices on it. On the other side of the pan, so half and half. The other side of the pan is chicken breast, bone-in chicken thighs. Excuse me.
Yep.
That had the same seasoning on it and olive oil. And then when you bake it for 45 minutes, then all the juices of the chicken come down. Take the fries off, and then you put, baby kale in the olive oil, and put an ahi verde sauce on it, and it's like the best meal. It's so easy to make.
Wow.
And it checks all the boxes. I don't know. That one comes to mind.
Do you
Yeah,
keep the
that's my
skin
answer.
on the bone
Oh, yeah.
in? You have to, right?
Have to. I mean,
For sure.
So what's the one guilty pleasure with a kale?
Yeah.
Kale
it's
sweet
the
potato
best.
dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. Is that what did you
Which
say?
I was just laughing because before we started this podcast, like Lucas asked us about our favorite recipe,
Yeah.
and we have a favorite recipe, but you saw how hard that was for Jack and I.
I had to go
share.
there.
Oh my
This
god,
one's too boring.
The whole
Yeah.
podcast
No, you
would have
don't-
been that other recipe.
You don't have to name the ingredients.
Yeah.
In it. Just what is it called? What is
We
it?
don't know.
One pan deliciousness. I don't know what
Yeah.
it
One pan
something.
sweet potato,
Meat.
chicken,
Yeah.
Veggies.
What was
Yeah.
the one that you were?
Feta cheese, chopped up green onions,
Yeah.
and then you just whip together all like nice olive oil, lemon juice, and salt, and you
Sounds super refreshing.
scrunch it together
Oh,
so
fuck
that
yeah.
it's like all.
I love
like,
that.
Thinly sliced, like truly shredded rum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I get
love
coached on that a
I
lot.
love a shredded
Yeah.
enough.
salad.
But like,
um,
good olive oil, I did not realize how big of a difference it's made.
Yeah.
I tried to do it when we're
Oh,
out of
okay.
good
Yeah.
olive oil. I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Have
No,
you
it's
guys ever been to
important.
Hillstone?
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Have you
Love
had
their sushi.
their kale
The
salad?
chicken Caesar kale
same
salad.
one
Well,
they
it
have at
doesn't.
Cherry
It
Creek
doesn't
Grill?
have.
Yeah.
It's so good.
You don't have to. It's not chicken Caesar. It's their salad. I don't think it has.
Oh, you're right. It is
Yeah.
just their kale salad.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's
you're right, you're right.
Finely
It's killer,
chopped.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
The
just like,
peanut
oh,
sauce?
yeah.
Yeah, they had the
Yes.
peanuts on it, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the crushed
Yeah,
peanuts
I
on
love
it?
it because it's like
Yeah.
the thinly
so good.
shaved.
Yeah.
They knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, we'll have to make that one.
We will.
Yeah, we'll make that one.
We will.
Okay, before we wrap up, maybe if there's like one last thing you would say, words of encouragement or wisdom, or like a takeaway for people listening who, are really just wanting to chase their dreams and be successful, whether it's in career or relationships.
We've got a pretty strong schedule. One of Chandler's love languages is time spent together, or quality time.
Quality
Yeah.
time.
And so every morning, despite the chaos that should ensue every morning with two little kids and rushing to get our schedules going, every morning we take the time to have coffee together while the kids eat breakfast. And so we're all sitting around the table. It's important for us to just chat. And it's not about routine schedule, like what are we doing today? It's not very transactional. It's very much a just quality time together. I found that to be very important. It's grounding for us. It's obviously checks a box for you, a good scratch itch. But in general, we have a very important relationship with how much we share physically, socially, mentally, and that quality time spent together I think is an important part of who we are.
Are you two very cognizant of each other's love language, and does that play a role in your relationship?
I think subconsciously probably more, but what were you going to say?
I think Jack's more considerate of it.
Yeah.
Like Jack's is words of affirmation as like a really big one, and sometimes
Child divorce.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to know when you're doing good
Yeah.
and feel loved. And
Yeah. But I mean, we've been together for a long time, so I think like we're always learning, and
Yeah.
there's always new things. But yeah. And I guess words of encouragement. I would just say, like, if you believe that you're meant for something, but you don't know what that something is, then like just keep believing in yourself. And lots of people experience imposter syndrome, and it's I think those that can push through imposter syndrome who can make something out of it. And then it's like that again, back to uniting. Like, it's uniting if you're working on an entrepreneurial pursuit to experience imposter syndrome, or if you're growing in your role or whatever, to be like, oh, other people felt like this too, and try to reframe that as a positive.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like that fake it till you make it in a way of like pushing through the imposter syndrome. I feel like when you have the imposter syndrome, but then you do it over time, you're just bound to kind of build that habit and flex that muscle, and then it turns into like a strength, or it turns to something that you just possess instead.
Yeah, and
I also think we give the term too much credit. Imposter syndrome is just trying something new. And
That's
Yeah.
all it
out
is.
of your skin, uncomfortable. Try
The
it.
only-
Just
Yeah.
keep going.
Great way to grow.
It's better to try and new things than to sit and have stagnant.
And
stagnancy.
I used to have to schedule a time to catastrophize at the end of the night,
that.
where I'd be like, worst case scenario, let's run through it.
Yeah.
So I'm not repressing
That's
it all
hard.
day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hard to do.
And it's like, if it's imposter syndrome or something else, like, just let yourself get to the end of the thought. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, that took like 30 seconds and I've been fighting it for 2 days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, oh, that's it? Okay. Like,
Yeah, if you like give it light, it just like melts instead of
Yeah.
keeping it in the dark
That's
and like
so
keeping
me.
it there.
That's so
Yeah.
me for sure. Yeah, I'll sit on something for like 3 days. Well, I like toss and turn, and like
Just
I
one
actually
thought,
just like
yeah.
sit down to actually just think about it fully through, because that what will keep me up at night is like 1/4 of
Exactly,
the
you're
thing.
looping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't, but I'm like, okay, let's go to maybe step 3, 2, 3, and 4, and then I'll do that, and I'm like, oh, okay, well,
Not
Not
too
big
bad,
deal.
actually.
yeah,
Not
I can
bad.
conquer
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I love that. Those
but
were good
before,
answers.
Before we conclude, where can people know what's going on at the Den? Where can they find the Den? How can they keep up to date with you and what you're doing and all that kind of jazz?
They can follow on our Instagram, which is @TheDenDenver_. We need a better name. But that's what it is right now. And that's where we are.
Or come visit.
We're in Lohi, which if you're in Denver, the Lower Highlands. So we're on 29th and Zuni next to Zuni Brewery. So yeah, I mean, and you don't have to come to the lounge if you don't want to. If you're just curious, or you want to talk to people and you know that this space will make eye contact with you, then come just get a coffee. We also have a coffee shop in the front that services the whole neighborhood.
They have great coffee.
Thank
really,
you.
Really
Yes.
good tasting
It's
fucking
important.
coffee.
Thank you, Pablo's.
Yes.
We love Pablo's too.
We love your coffee so much.
Thank you.
So whenever, anything else to add
No.
before we conclude?
Take it away.
Yeah, so in the restaurant industry, you know this, when you run out of something, it's 86th. So do you mind looking at the camera and letting the
Both
listeners...
of you guys.
Jack's like,
At the same time. 1, 2, 3 it.
This is the first time I've looked at the camera this entire... if you guys can just let our listeners know that this episode is officially 86th.
It's 86th.
oh, yep.
Yes.
Thought we were going to coordinate that.
Right.
I thought we were going to do a 1, 2, 3 situation.
Okay, well, take it away, buddy.
No,
That was good.
That was perfect.
Don't